Imagine scrolling through YouTube and seeing a video titled, "Coffee is Killing You Slowly." It warns that coffee contains acrylamide, a toxic chemical formed when foods are roasted, and links it to cancer, high blood pressure, and other ailments. The message is alarming. Could your morning cup of coffee really be poisoning you? Welcome back, or if you're new here, welcome for the first time. I'm Dr. John Chuback. Today we're using science and trusted medical resources to examine whether we need to ditch our coffee mugs. Contrary to viral scare stories, evidence says that moderate coffee drinking is generally safe and even beneficial for most people. Let's break down the claims piece by piece and look at what research actually shows. Acrylamide is a naturally occurring chemical that forms when plant-based foods are cooked at high temperature, typically through roasting, frying, or baking. It develops from a reaction between sugars and the amino acid asparagine, a process known as the Maillard reaction, which is responsible for the delicious golden brown color and flavor of toasted bread, French fries, and roasted coffee beans. According to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, acrylamide can be found in a wide variety of foods, including cereals, crackers, cookies, and roasted nuts. The compound was first discovered in foods in 2002, prompting extensive research into its potential health effects. Since then, the FDA and other major health organizations have concluded that acrylamide in food is not a reason for panic. The National Cancer Institute explains that although high doses of acrylamide can cause cancer in laboratory animals, human studies have not shown a consistent or causal link between normal dietary exposure and increased cancer risk. Acrylamide does not build up in the body. It's metabolized and excreted relatively quickly. In other words, small amounts from cooked foods, including coffee, do not accumulate over time to dangerous levels. Most people consume trace amounts of acrylamide daily, primarily from staple foods like toast, fries, and roasted grains. Regulatory agencies emphasize risk reduction strategies such as not overcooking starchy foods, but none recommended avoiding coffee. The FDA does not classify coffee as unsafe and advises maintaining a balanced diet instead of eliminating foods due to acrylamide content. It's worth noting that acrylamide levels in coffee depend on roasting and brewing methods. Lighter roasts contain slightly higher levels than darker ones because acrylamide forms early during roasting and gradually breaks down at higher temperatures. Regardless, the amount present in brewed coffee remains far below the threshold that would raise health concerns. So while it's good to understand how acrylamide forms, its trace presence in coffee is not harmful at typical consumption levels. This is a conclusion shared by the FDA, NCI, and the American Cancer Society. Concerns about acrylamide often stem from its classification as a potential carcinogen based on animal studies using extremely high doses. In those studies, rodents were exposed to concentrations thousands of times greater than what humans could consume through food or drink. When scientists extrapolate these findings, they emphasize that dose makes the poison. Caffeine contains about 45 to 200 micrograms of acrylamide per kilogram of beans. A single cup of brewed coffee provides a minuscule fraction of that, often less than a few micrograms. For context, an average serving of French fries may contain 5 to 10 times more acrylamide than a cup of coffee. Yet, no major public health organization has advised avoiding French fries outright, only moderation and mindful preparation. The World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer, IARC, reviewed more than 1,000 studies and concluded in 2016 that coffee itself could not be classified as a carcinogen. In fact, coffee was reclassified from possibly carcinogenic to not classifiable because of growing evidence showing neutral or beneficial effects on cancer outcomes. So the mere presence of acrylamide in coffee is not evidence of danger. A chemical's existence in food does not make it toxic at dietary doses. Without context, numbers can be misleading. When examined properly, the data overwhelmingly shows that coffee's potential benefits far outweigh any theoretical risk from trace acrylamide. The best way to evaluate coffee safety is not by isolating one compound, but studying real health outcomes among millions of people who drink it daily. Decades of epidemiologic research and clinical observation reveal a consistent pattern. Regular coffee consumption is associated with lower disease risk, improved longevity, and better metabolic health. Numerous studies, including large-scale analysis from the NIH and major universities, show that coffee drinkers live longer. One long-term NIH study found that people who drink coffee in the morning morning have a 16% lower risk of death from any cause over the next decade. Other studies replicated these findings across different populations and ethnicities, suggesting that the effect is not cultural or a dietary coincidence. Researchers believe this may be due to coffee's high antioxidant content. Antioxidants are something I'm a big fan of, as any of our followers know. Each cup contains hundreds of biologically active compounds, including chlorogenic acids and polyphenols, which reduce oxidative stress and inflammation, two underlying drivers of chronic disease and aging. Heart health is one of the strongest areas of evidence for coffee. Johns Hopkins Medicine reports that moderate coffee drinkers have a significantly lower risk of coronary heart disease and stroke. Even heart failure risk appears to be reduced in those who consume 1 to 2 cups a day. Coffee temporarily raises blood pressure after drinking, but over time, habitual drinkers tend to have lower average blood pressure than non-drinkers. This may result from improved endothelial function, the health of the inner lining of blood vessels, and enhanced nitric oxide activity, which promotes better circulation. Contrary to popular myths, coffee does not clog arteries or cause heart disease when consumed without excessive sugar or cream. On the contrary, it often contributes to better cardiovascular outcomes. The Mayo Clinic highlights that coffee drinkers have a lower risk of type 2 diabetes. Studies attribute this to coffee's antioxidant effects and its ability to support insulin sensitivity. Healthline adds that compounds such as magnesium and lignans in coffee promote better glucose control and liver function. Decaf coffee provides similar benefits, which means caffeine alone is not responsible. It's the full spectrum of bioactive plant compounds. Regular coffee intake is also associated with lower rates of chronic liver disease and cirrhosis. Liver enzyme markers improve among those who drink coffee regularly, and habitual coffee drinkers show up to 40% lower risk of liver cancer compared to non-drinkers. Coffee also supports brain function and mental health. Caffeine stimulates the central nervous system by blocking adenosine receptors, which enhances alertness and mood. Long-term studies show lower rates of Parkinson's disease among coffee drinkers, with evidence suggesting a protective effect on dopamine-producing neurons. Johns Hopkins reports that older adults who drink 2 to 3 cups of coffee daily show lower rates of dementia and cognitive decline. Caffeine, along with polyphenols, may improve blood flow to the brain and reduce amyloid plaque buildup associated with Alzheimer's disease. Coffee is also linked to better mental well-being. Observational studies show that moderate coffee drinkers have lower rates of depression, and one large meta-analysis found that 4 or more cups daily were associated with a 63% reduction in depression risk. Far from increasing cancer risk, coffee may actually help to reduce it. Johns Hopkins notes that regular coffee drinkers have a 26% lower risk of colorectal cancer. Mayo Clinic also reports lower rates of liver and oral cancers among coffee consumers. In 2016, the IARC concluded that coffee is not carcinogenic and may actually offer protective effects due to its antioxidants and anti-inflammatory compounds. Many of coffee's bioactive molecules enhance DNA repair and detoxification pathways, which may explain the reduced risk observed across various cancers. It's natural to be cautious when hearing about chemicals in food, but mechanisms don't always predict real-world harm. Acrylamide can bind to certain cellular structures or DNA under lab conditions, but those effects occur at concentrations never achieved through diet. Health outcomes always carry more weight than isolated chemical reactions. If acrylamide in coffee were truly harmful, we would expect higher rates of cancer, neurological disease, or mortality among coffee drinkers. The opposite is true. Across decades of global research, coffee consistently correlates with longer life and lower risk of major chronic diseases. Mechanisms are interesting for scientists, but for public health, the big picture matters more, and the big picture overwhelmingly favors coffee. Like any stimulant, caffeine should be consumed sensibly. Too much can cause jitteriness, headaches, or insomnia. The Mayo Clinic recommends that most adults keep intake below 400 milligrams of caffeine per day, roughly 3 to 5 cups. Pregnant or breastfeeding individuals should limit intake to around 200 milligrams daily. Individual tolerance, of course, varies. Some people metabolize caffeine faster due to genetic differences, while others experience stronger effects even at low doses. Those with high anxiety, irregular heart rhythms, or sleep disorders may need to limit or avoid caffeine altogether. It's also worth addressing a few common misconceptions. Let's talk about coffee and dehydration. While caffeine has a mild diuretic effect, coffee still contributes to daily fluid intake. Regular drinkers adapt quickly, and moderate consumption does not cause dehydration. Unfiltered coffees, such as French press or espresso, contain compounds called cafestol and kawiol, which can raise cholesterol slightly. Using a paper filter removes most of these substances. Next, let's talk about coffee and acid reflux. Some individuals experience reflux with coffee, often due to acidity or timing rather than caffeine itself. Choosing darker roasts, smaller servings, or drinking with food can help minimize symptoms. As with all food and beverages, moderation and awareness of personal response are key. Here's what the research consistently shows. Coffee drinkers have lower all-cause mortality. Coffee drinkers have reduced risk of coronary artery disease, stroke, and heart failure. They also have a lower risk of type 2 diabetes and chronic liver disease. Additionally, coffee drinkers see lower risk of Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and cognitive decline. Coffee drinkers also show a reduced risk of depression and an improved mood. They also show lower rates of liver, colorectal, and certain oral cancers. There's also evidence that it provides a small but meaningful amount of B vitamin, potassium, magnesium, and manganese. Caffeine also delivers powerful antioxidants and polyphenols that support vascular function, metabolism, and even brain health. The idea that coffee is dangerous because of acrylamide simply isn't supported by science. Acrylamide does form in coffee beans during roasting, but in trace amounts that are well within safe limits. The body efficiently metabolizes it, and population studies show no measurable health risk from normal coffee consumption. In contrast, the benefits of coffee are substantial and well documented. From reducing diabetes and heart disease risk to protecting the brain and improving longevity, the evidence overwhelmingly favors coffee as a part of a healthy lifestyle. So drink your morning coffee with confidence, enjoy it mindfully, keep your intake moderate, and skip the excess sugar. Coffee isn't the villain it sometimes is made out to be. In fact, it may be one of the simplest, most accessible daily habits for supporting long-term health, and it can also be very enjoyable. I'm Dr. John Chuback. Thanks for tuning into this video, and I'll see you in the next one.